Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It is that time again for a monthly wrap-up and a new month's TBR. So, we're here with April's wrap-up, and I'm so excited for this video because I actually read my entire TBR, which I'm feeling so proud of myself for, that I planned it good enough and then actually finished it all. It was a little bit of a close call. I finished the last one yesterday. I was planning on filming this video yesterday on May, what was it, 30th, 31st, whatever the last day of May was, and then April, whatever the last day of April was, April 30th I guess, but then I was still finishing the last book and I was determined to get it done, and so this video is now being filmed on May 1st, and hopefully I can get it edited and up soon. But without further ado, here is my April wrap-up, what I read in April, plus my May TBR. The other thing that I'm really proud of myself for with this month's reading is my yearly goal that I set for myself was 50, and that's what I said on Goodreads. I am officially at 25, so I'm halfway through, right at the end of April, and I am definitely on track to read a lot more books than 50, which was my original goal, especially since I'm about to be off for the summer. So I'm really excited about that. I'm gonna get through a lot more than I thought I was going to this year, so that's another thing that I am just patting myself on the back for. But let's get in, sorry, pulling up my Goodreads. Let's get into the first book. The first three books that I have to show you are all three from a video that is going to be coming out hopefully soon, as soon as I can get around to editing it. But I talked about it in last month's wrap-up, which I will link up above if you haven't gone and watched that one. But I made a video where I read all of my, or not all of them, but some of my favorite childhood books. And so the first three books that I read for this month were part of that video. That will be coming out hopefully soon as I can get it done editing. The first one that I read was Theodosia and the Serpents of Chaos. It's the first book of the Theodosia Throckmorton, I think I'm saying that right, Theodosia Throckmorton series. I'm not going to go too in-depth about this, but if you didn't see my TBR from last month, this is basically about a little girl whose parents are curators of an Egyptian history museum, and she basically goes and helps them at the museum, but she is all into magic and Egyptian curses and Egyptian gods and things like that, and so she goes around uncursing all the items that her parents bring into the museum. And then she goes on this whole little thing, there's secret societies, stuff like that. I gave this book 4 stars. Again, I'm not going to go too in depth into my thoughts. If you want to see them, keep an eye out for the video that is going to be coming soon, including this with all of my thoughts. But I did still really like it, it's fun, and I may have to go watch the TV show. There is a TV series, I don't know who it's made by, but there's a TV series going around with this one. So 4 stars, would recommend. It is definitely a kid's book, but I still think it's really good. The next book that I read, also part of that video, so I'm not going to go too in-depth onto that, is the name of this book is Secret, which is part of the Secret series. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. It is a fun little mystery about some kids. It's super hard to explain, but there's basically people who mix up the senses and experience senses in different ways, and these kids get roped into a mystery surrounding people who have the ability to see senses in different ways. And so basically that's not much, but it's hard to say anything more about it without spoiling it because it is kind of a mystery book. But a magician goes missing, they're trying to figure out what happened to the magician, and so that's kind of the basis of this book. But I did give this one 4.5 stars, more thoughts to come in that childhood books video. I know that's getting a little annoying, I've only got one more that's part of that video, but 4.5 stars. The last book that I read that was part of that video is Farworld, which was my most anticipated read for this month and that video. This is Waterkeep, the first book in the Farworld series. It is basically about, so you have Earth and you have this boy on Earth, and then you have a girl on Farworld who lives in this world of magic, but she's the only person who can't do magic or be impacted by it. And they go on this journey to find these elementals to try and save their world from this dark force. Basically that's the general premise of it. It's all based around the elements. There's water, land, air, fire are the 4 elementals, the 4 books. and they have to get the elementals all to help them with defeating this evil. Really good. I gave it 4 stars. I had read this one before. Again, this was part of my rereading childhood favorites, but I hadn't read the rest of the series. So that's all I'm going to say about this book. The rest of the series, though, was not part of that video, but I did end up reading them this month. So the second one is Land Keep, and I did give Land Keep 4.5 stars. So got a little bit better. This one basically, I don't know, it's hard to talk about the rest of the books in a series without spoiling what happens in the first book, but this one's all centered around the land elementals and their journey to find them and involve them in their little quest to save, I mean, I guess not little quest, but in their quest to save Earth and Farworld. I thought this one was a little bit better. It's a little bit similar to Waterkeep, just in that it's kind of the same general plot, nothing really happens. The end of this book, though, is where you get a major plot twist. So when you get to the end of this book, it reveals something that is a big plot twist, and it kind of sets up this trajectory of just really speeding the series up. So this is kind of the last slower book. It's not slow, but it's definitely slower than the last two. But the very end of this just leaves you on a plot twist that is just quite the cliffhanger, and so I immediately, like, literally put that book down and went and grabbed this one, read the next book. So the next book is Air Keep. This one's obviously about the air elements, and this one I finally did give 5 stars. There is a lot going on in this book. There are a lot of plot twists all the way through. Stuff is changing like crazy. It's just got a lot to it, and this is probably the most fast-paced book out of the series. So this one was probably my favorite. There was so much going on. There's so many things just pushing the plot forward, changing how you think about things, and it's not the same, just like follow the same trajectory as the other two that are kind of just going through the process of finding the elementals and trying to get them to help. This one does still do that, but it changes a lot of things about your perspective of what's going on in the book overall. And then after this one also leaves off on a major cliffhanger. I don't know how people read these as they were coming out, because there were pretty big gaps in between when these books were published. And I don't know how you deal with the cliffhanger at the end of this book, waiting for the next one to come out. You are all lucky if you read it to be reading it when all the books are out. And then the last one is Fire Keep. One thing to know, I did find the first 3 secondhand, and then this one I had to buy new because I couldn't find it, and it is a little bit different. So just keep that in mind if you're doing half thrifting, half buying them new. This one's published in a way that makes it a lot thinner. I think it's about the same length though. But this is Fire Keep. This is the last book in the Farworld series. I did end up giving this one 5 stars as well. This one does start out a little bit slower, and I will say the first part of this book is a little bit frustrating, but I'm not mad about it, and it wasn't enough to not dock it down from 5 stars. Purely because the character is also so frustrated. Like, you are feeling what the main character is feeling in this book, and I think it was totally done on purpose. Once you get through the first little frustrating bit where it kind of moves slow, it then picks up back to the pace of the first book, if not even faster, and things are just going crazy. You're getting tons and tons of plot twists, wild things are happening, and so it makes up for the little bit of slow frustrating at the beginning. It's just frustrating because you're not getting information very fast, and the plot twist that left off in the other book doesn't really get resolved for a little bit, but I think it's done to make you feel the frustration that the character's feeling. So it's not like in a bad way where you're just frustrated because nothing is happening at all. When you do get to the resolution where it starts to pick back up and you get the plot twist, it all makes sense and it all pays off, so it's worth it. I will say, this book, so many plot twists, even in the epilogue. Like, the epilogue at the end is only a couple pages, but it has a twist that totally turns the entire series on its head and makes you rethink everything you just read. And so it's like not to the point where I wish that they would have written more books after. It's not like an unsatisfying ending, but it does totally twist the whole book on its top of, like, upside down. And I've been thinking about it ever since I finished reading this. So this series of Farworld is up there in my new favorite series. I will be recommending this to everyone, that they read it until everyone in my life has read this book. 5-star series for sure. It is one of my new favorite series. And I know that I read the first one as a kindergartner. So I think it can go for all ages, but honestly, it's probably more of like a YA book. I'm not entirely sure why he was doing an assembly at our elementary school. The author came and like did an assembly when I was in elementary school. That's how I know about it. He's from Utah. And I'm not quite sure why he was going to elementary schools, because I think this is more of a YA book. It's definitely like nothing that an elementary schooler couldn't handle, but the writing's so intense and interesting that I think it's just as fun to read as an adult as it is for an elementary schooler. So I love things that can be read by all ages, and this is definitely one of those. So that's the Farworld series. That was the bulk of what I read this month, and it was so good. Then once I finished Farworld, I wanted to go and read a few of the standalone books that I had on my list. Again, these were all on my TBR. The only book so far that I read this month that wasn't on my TBR was Fire Keep. I just wasn't sure if I was going to get through the whole series, but it was so good that I just had to. But once I was done with that, I had a few standalones that I wanted to check off my list and off my TBR before I got into reading any more series, which I have a couple planned for this next month, which we'll get into later. But the first one that I picked up was The Westing Game. It's super tiny, under 200 pages, and small pages. But basically what it is there is this billionaire who dies, and in his will he names a whole bunch of people, one of which he names as his murderer, even though it seems like he died from natural causes. And so basically there's this game that they have to play in order to get their inheritance. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. I really liked the ending. Like, the ending was good. There's a lot of fun things that got pulled out in the end, but I felt like the whole book, I was just so confused about what the mystery even was. Like, supposedly he's murdered and he throws that out there in the will, but it kind of felt like it was just an old man trying to get people guessing to like make it so that they'd play his game. And there just wasn't enough stuff going on, and there weren't enough clues being dropped for you to even figure out what the mystery was, let alone what the answer was. So like, I had 0 theories because there's so little information that you're getting. And so I don't know. It was 3 stars. It was good, quick read. Like, the ending's worth it, and it did pay off and have a good ending, but it just took so long to get there, even for a book that's under 200 pages, that I just don't know. This isn't my top recommendation. If you want a book that is about like inheritance type stuff and dead billionaires playing games and stuff, go read the Inheritance Games. That one's really good. Gave all those books like 5 stars. I love them all. But this book just didn't really do it for me. But it is under 200 pages, so there's only so much you can do in that short of a time period. It just wasn't top of my list. After that, I finally finished The Rent Collector. If you've watched my last couple TBR videos, this has been on there quite a few times. I started this book last July, and then I got not quite halfway, but pretty close, and I put it down for several months until now, and I finally made myself finish it. Basically what The Rent Collector is it's a book about this family living in the dump, what's it called? Stungmanchi? Something like that. I'm sure I'm horribly pronouncing that. But it's this dump in Cambodia, and these people live there picking through the trash, trying to find valuable things that can be basically reused, like metals and things like that, and that's how they make their living. It's pretty, obviously terrible living conditions, but it's about this mom and, well, this little family. They have 1 child. The child is always sick. They live in the dump. It's just like not good conditions for a child to be healthy. But she finds out that the person who collects their rent knows how to read. And so she basically makes a deal with the rent collector to teach her how to read in hopes that she can then get herself like a better future and a better future for her child. And it pretty much just follows her process, or her progress in her learning how to read and how that impacts her life. The first half of the book is really slow. Honestly, most of the book is really slow. It's not like a fast-paced book. And like the first half of the book covers a really long period of time and nothing changes. Like, she learns how to read a little bit better, but it doesn't impact her life in any way, shape, or form. And that was kind of frustrating for me. I did end up putting it down because just nothing was happening, and I just got bored, and I wasn't really like sure what was going on. The second half of the book does start to pick up a little bit. It's still definitely not fast-paced by any means, but it is a little bit better. When you finally start to get towards the end a bit of backstory on the rent collector, that's when it got interesting. I marked the chapter because it's like the one chapter that I really liked. It's page 212, chapter 25, is where you get, in the rent collector's words, her story. And it is so interesting. I wish the whole book was written about the rent collector. Like, I don't fully understand why we spent so much time talking about this mom and her sick baby when we could have been hearing the absolutely crazy story of the rent collector. And I'm sure if you're like a mom and you could like connect with this character, maybe it's more interesting and people would love it. But I'm not the most like heartwarming books or movies type of a person. I just don't find them that interesting, and the rent collector has definitely the more tragic story. But I thought it would have been so interesting, and the chapter that they wrote in her story is so good that I wish the whole book was that. So I did end up giving it 3 stars. I think if you like heartwarming books, this is a great read for you. You'd probably love it. If you are like me and you love fast-paced, plot-based books, this one's not going to hold your attention really well. But if you want something that's eye-opening into what some of the living situations of people in Cambodia and how much reading and literacy can actually make a difference to those people, it's a good read. It's written really well. I do really like the writing style. It's just like a character-based book, not a plot-based book. And so if you like books that just like follow characters, then you might really like it. But I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's not bad. I did really like the writing. It's just not the plot for me. And then the last book that I put off filming this video for because I had to finish it was Dune Messiah. This is the 2nd book in the Dune series. I read Dune a couple years ago. I really liked it. It was good. I read it in order for the movie. I didn't like love Dune, like it's not a 5-star read for me, but it was pretty good. And so I was interested to see where the rest of the series went because I feel like nobody talks about the rest of the series. It's always just like the first book that everybody considers a classic. And I can see why not very many people talk about this book. It's almost more the vibe of a novella. Like, it's not so engaging, it's more just like furthering the plot for the rest of the series to get it to the point where they want the rest of the series to be. That part is a little tricky. It's also a lot smaller than the actual Dune book, but basically this is picking up 10 years later after Dune, and I don't want to say too much because I, again, don't want to spoil the plot of Dune, but it picks up 10 years later, kind of showing the impacts of everything that happens in Dune. Basically, it talks about like corruption and how too much power can corrupt even a good thing, and stuff like that. It's definitely not as engaging, and I was so confused because it throws so many random names and words at you that aren't explained super well. But overall, I thought it was an interesting read. If you really like the Dune universe, it would be interesting to read. If you like philosophical things, you might find this really interesting. And if you like to see heroes not being perfect, this could be an interesting read for you. Again, it's a little more novella vibes. I'm interested to see what the rest of the series does because this doesn't super set it up. So I'm not entirely sure what the next book is going to be. But overall, it was a 3-star read. It was okay. If you really like Dune, it'd be worth reading. So these are the 9 books that I read in April. Let's get into my May TBR just really quick. The first little bit that I plan on doing for May is finishing the Secret series. So there's 4 more books. I've got If You're Reading This, It's Too Late, This Book Is Not Good For You, This Isn't What It Looks Like, and You Have to Stop This. So the rest of these series, I won't spend too much time talking about them. It's just continuing the mystery. I have read the entire series before, so these will all be rereads for me, but I'm interested to see what they're like. That's the first things that I plan to read. I'm hoping I can breeze through these pretty quick. They're definitely written at a very low reading level, and they're pretty spaced out. There's lots of like pictures and things, so I'm hoping I can kind of cruise through these. But that's pretty much all I'm going to say. So those are the first 4 books on my TBR. Then the next book that I'm planning on reading, I have a really exciting series that I plan on doing upcoming on my channel, and I'd like to start it this month. If I get around to editing this month, we will see. It may come out actually in June, but the next 2 books that I plan on reading for my TBR are both for that video, for like the first video in that series. One of them is The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. This is not the cover that I plan on keeping. I ordered it from Thrift Books, thought I was getting a different cover, ended up with this one. Don't love it. I will probably be donating this and getting a different cover that I like better, but this is kind of described as a book within a book mystery. I don't fully understand what the plot is, but this is the first book that I plan on reading. And then the next one that I plan on reading, I don't have the physical copy yet. It is in the mail, but it is Pedro Paramo. I don't think I'm saying that very well, but so just forgive my pronunciations. But it is basically kind of a magical realism type of a book about a survivor of the Mexican Revolution, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute since I read through what the plot is of that one. So based on those two books, I'd be interested to know if anybody can guess what that series is that I'm coming out with. It probably seems super random, but that will all be revealed hopefully soon. Those are the two books that I plan on reading after I finish the Seeker series. And then the last book that I'm hoping to get through in May is Mistborn. This cover is probably not great, the spine is better. But Mistborn is a fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. He's kind of a big author in the fantasy world. My husband loves Mistborn. This is like his favorite book, and so I'm going to finally get around to reading it. It is thick. There are 3 books in the series. It's a trilogy, and they are all quite thick. So I'm hoping I can get through this one. We will see if I actually get all the way through that stack of books. I might have a little bit of a busy month with the end of school, but then I will be into summer and will be reading so much more, and I'm hoping to get through a lot of books this summer. That's a speed version of my TBR for May, and a wrap up of all of the books that I read in April. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some recommendations. If you take anything from this video, go and find Farworld and read it. It's so good, you will not regret it. It's new favorite books. But I hope you're excited to hear my thoughts on some of these books from my TBR. Keep your eye out for the rereading my childhood favorite books, which will hopefully be coming soon along with some other things. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.